Hello guys, and welcome to this new episode of How to Make a Chess Plan. In this video we'll watch a game between Boris Gulko and Radjabov, which was played in Malmo in 2001. Please note that Radjabov was only 14 years old when the game was played, but had already a rating of 2533, which is to me pretty impressive. So Boris Gulko starts with g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, d4, d6, e4. Here the most common move is knight f6, but Radjabov decided to play e5. So pawn takes, queen takes d8, and king takes d8. So white here has an initiative, because the white king is better than the black king, as it can steal castle, and when it will long castle it will give a check. And also white is first to play. So can you find a plan to use this initiative to create something that gives an advantage for white? I give you a few seconds to find the plan. You can also stop the video and think a bit longer. So in this position, white played the really amazing move to me, which is b3. Well, it's maybe a bit strange to hear that b3 is an amazing move, but look. The idea is to put the bishop on b2, to put pressure on e5, and pin also the pawn and put in some long term some pressure on the bishop on g7. And if black would try to mirror this idea by playing b6, it would be just met by bishop b2, bishop b7, and by example knight a3. And as you see, a lot of furrows just arrived on the board, but white will long castle, giving a check, play knight c4, attacking even more the pawn on e5, and then push f4. And black really has a hard time to develop his pieces and even just to link his rooks. So black can't play b6 to mirror, and so decide to play another plan. So it goes bishop e6, bishop b2, we follow the plan, knight d7, knight d2, knight e7. So now obviously we cannot play knight c4 because it would be met by bishop takes c4, just doubling the pawns. Here you can again pause the video to find the move for white, which is a really good move. So white played bishop h3. It's really solving two problems in one. So we are going to take away this bishop on e6 and free the c4 square for a knight, and we are exchanging a bad bishop, because the pawn on e4 is on the same color as this bishop, against the good black bishop. So it's a two-in-one move, really a really important move, I would say. If black would play f5, the only move really to save the day and save the bishop, white might just continue by knight f3, stunning knight g5, castling, bringing those rook to e1, and those two pawns on e5 and f5 would be so hard to defend. So black has to accept to exchange those bishops. So bishop takes h3, knight takes h3. So now the knight wants to go to g5 and to c4. I mean the h3 knight to g5 and the d2 knight to c4. Black plays f6, protecting the pawn and the g5 square, but from another hand, it's weakening a bit the square on e6, and also it makes this bishop looks more stupid as more pawns are coming on the dark squares. So white continue by the logical long castle, linking its rook. So I mean it's just basic, it's just the basics, but it's important to do that. So now this king is a bit in trouble because the rook is in front of it, and you never like to have a king in front of a rook. So he needs to choose. So he chooses king e8 in the game. If he would play c6, which might look logical to bring the king on c7, the problem would be that after knight c4, king c7 and bishop a3, this d6 square is really weak. And well, white could give a check with the bishop on d6, or bring the rook to double the rook, or even the knight to stretch some rooks, or to stretch some forks. So black decided to go king e8 just to make sure you don't weaken your d6 square, and want to play king f7 and rook e8 now to rook e8 and rook d8 to link the rook and finally get all the pieces into play. So white still has an initiative and better pieces because we still have this dark square bishop better than the dark square bishop for black. So white continues by adding up even more pressure in the center by playing f4. So now, once again, we see a problem that might occur, that after pawn take, this pawn on e5 might become again pinned, and also it's getting attacked more and more. So we have one attack, two attack, and the third one coming on c4, and well, it's going to be a problem clearly. And this king also, when the f file opens, might be attacked by the rook at some point. So white has a good hand on the game. Knight c6, developing the pieces, developing the knight on the better square. Knight c4. So now all the pieces are well placed, except the knight on h3 and the rook on h1. We still have time for the rook on h1 because it's not clear where it's better placed. But this knight should go back to f2, looking toward g4 or d3 or even c5, which are good squares. So it might land either on g4, either on d3, either on c5, which are the three squares it could be useful on. Knight b6. The idea of knight b6 is to exchange pieces. Obviously, white has no interest in exchanging a knight, because when you have initiative, you want to keep as much pieces as you can on the board, and the less pieces on the board, the easier it's for the different side to save the day and take the draw. So white plays knight to e3, looking toward d5 now. Rook d8, so it's trying to exchange pieces with black, which is logical, and knight d5. So keeping the pieces on the board, and now attacking c7, more or less forcing knight take d5. So now the position is opening up, and this is good for white as the king is misplaced. Remember, we still can't castle because the king moved, and this is going just to be another problem for black. So pawn takes. As you see, I opened the arrow because the rook is coming on e1, and this pawn is still going to be pinned by the diagonal because of the bishop and by the e file. Knight e7, attacking the pawn on d5, so we just defend it by c4. So now the next move for white, if nothing happens, is really easy. Rook e1, more or less forcing the pawn exchange, and the knight comes to f4 and to e6, and this is end of the game. So black has to react. He goes c6. c6. So now we need to bring this rook and this knight into play. And it's a bit a tactical choice now, a tactical variation. So pawn takes c5, pawn takes c5, and knight f4. So finally, we use this pin to bring the knight on a wonderful square, because f4, so it means it's coming to e6 on the next move, and we are forcing black to take. So bishop g7, rook g8 force, this is the only move. Bishop f6. So now we are threatening rook e1, which would be winning a piece, because after rook d7, pawn takes. After rook d7, I would okay, if we play a6 by example, rook e1, rook d7, pawn takes, rook d1 check, king takes d1, and you cannot defend this knight anymore. So this is the threat. So black plays rook f8, bishop takes, king take, rook e1 check, king f6, and finally we are a pawn up. pawn take, and black can't retake it anymore because the king came on the way. Black plays pawn take, and here you can take again, you can make a pause and tell me or tell yourself, because it's YouTube and I can't hear you, which piece white should take back. So here this is the rules that you should exchange rooks if there are two pair of rook on the board when you have more material. So white will play rook d5. Just to show you, after pawn take, rook d6, black is blocking this pawn, and it's really hard to make progress with white now. Well, it's hard to see how white could get this rook away. Like if you want to double, by example, on the e file, you are never going to make that, because after rook e5, by example, you can go rook d8, and it's not easy to see how you unpin or you unpin on this. So following the rule, white just go rook takes, rook take, and c take. So now the king is cut off the d5 pawn by this rook, and this position is basically winning for white, though it's not that easy still. So king f5. So black is searching for counterplay on the king side. Usually when you are a pawn down, you can try to go to run your own pawn. Well, trying just to save the game. Also, it's a bit scary for white somehow. You could even you need to calculate, because those pawns are pretty quick. So here, very logical move, rook e7, coming on the 7th rank. It's one of the ABC of the rook endgame, attacking the pawn. h5. So now black is expanding the king side and trying to pass a pawn and eventually to make a queen. Rook b7, king f4, d6. It's an important move, d6, because after rook a7, king e5, well, black is going to win back this pawn on d5 and comes with rook to win the pawn on h2 also, and with this two-passed pawn, it could be dangerous. It's d6. Rook d8, rook a7, rook d6. Now we push our pawn a4. So it's symmetrical here somehow, but we still have a pawn on h2, and a pawn on h2 means a few tempo to take it. So with the king, we do 1, 2, 3 tempo, which is a lot in such position, because 3 tempo means a queen most of the time. h4, a5, g5, king c2. Important move, because white is coming to support the pawns with the king, and we still have this pawn on h2. So if by example black would exchange the g pawn against the h pawn, white could eventually exchange the rook against the pawn when it comes to g1, and with 2 pawns against a rook at the end, with the pawn pretty much pushed, as by example the pawn would be to b5 and the king to b4, it's a win for white. And I think that pawns would be even further. So g4, b4, king e4, rook g7. So now the rook is coming to attack those pawns. King f5, king c3, coming with the king. Rook c6, king b3, rook c1, a6. So the rook is coming from behind, but it doesn't change much. b5. Now the pawns are really close to it. We still have somehow a symmetrical pawns, but this pawn on a2 is really a decider, of course. Rook b1, king c4, rook a1, king c5. So now white can push the pawns, but black is pretty much stuck. King f4, a7, and now white is just 2 moves away, b6, b7, and your queen on b8. So black cannot do anything to stop that, and decided to resign. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel, put a like on the video, make a comment. Have a great evening, great 2015 years. Goodbye, guys.